Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Seed catalogs have a dizzying array of choices. We'll talk about how to pick the right seeds for your garden. Also, planting bulbs now will give you beautiful early spring flowers. Today, we're going to show you how to plant tulips. And we'll talk about what gardening tasks need to be done over the winter. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Tom Mashour. Mr. Tom is a master gardener in Tipton County. Joellen Dimond is here, and Mr. D is with us today. Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tom, let's talk about selecting and buying seeds, because over the winter, folks are going to get their seed catalogs, and they're going to want to buy a lot of seeds. So let's help them out.
Well, first of all, the catalogs usually start showing up in November.
Okay.
So be patient. They'll be here in a week or two, if not a little bit longer.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the advantages of growing plants from seeds. Let's start with that.
Well, the advantage of growing plants from seeds is your selection is humongous. If you're like, for example, looking for the tomato plants that your grandma used to grow, more than likely you'll find it in the catalog. So you got a tremendous selection of seeds. And the seeds catalogs also have a lot of information about the plants. General information about, say, for example, tomato plants, and then detailed information on each variety of tomato plants. It's fun. It's fun. And also you can save money, substantial amount of money if you're doing a lot of seeds.
Okay.
But if you only want to do a couple tomato plants, then rather going through the trouble of doing it is to just go ahead and buy the couple plants that you want, if you can find the plants that you want.
Okay.
In your retail stores, excuse me, in the retail stores, you're lucky if they'll have maybe 15 varieties of tomatoes. A one seed catalog, a tomato seed catalog, has 450 varieties of tomatoes.
Yes.
They also have like 160, I think it was 185 varieties of different pepper plants. Everything from ornamental peppers to the ghost pepper. And 60 to 70 choices on eggplants. And this is all in one catalog. And that is not all inclusive. So that's the biggest advantage. And like I said, you can grow them. Another big advantage of them is that, especially from a catalog, is that you can order your seeds now. Retail stores, they usually don't get the seed packets in until after the Christmas season, because the garden sections are usually where the seeds are. Yeah. And that's where they put the Christmas stuff. So you have to kind of wait to get your seeds. And like I said, the selections are just too numerous to count, really.
Okay. So those are the advantages. What about, of course, the disadvantages?
Well, the big disadvantage is you're swapping your equity, which is sweat equity, for the sweat equity of the growers. So it's not cheap if you're going to just do a couple plants. If you're doing a lot of plants, then yes, it's cheap. A lot cheaper to do it that way. The catalog seeds are more expensive than the local seeds. Also, catalog seeds are usually sold by the number of seeds in the pack, whereas at the retail stores, they're sold by the weight, 30 milligrams, whatever. You have to have some place to put the seeds. So you may have to make one of the homemade grow stands to start them up, because you got to have the right environment for it. And you can't start tomato seeds outside in the wintertime, or pepper seeds, or whatever. Very few plants you can start. But the biggest disadvantage is the fact is it's time, but the kick is it's fun to see that life growing, you know.
Sure.
You get out there in the garden, I don't know about other gardeners like me, but many times I'm down there on my hands and knees waiting for the seeds to germinate, checking them out. And when they do, it's just a big kick, you know, it really is. Knowing that, hey, I started these plants from seed.
What's another source for getting these seeds?
Well, basically there's three main sources. Okay. First of all, the catalogs. Right. And you can go on the internet and look at them online, or you can order them. and they get send them to you for free. There's a few companies that charge $5, very few. But with your first order, you get credit for the $5, so it ends up not costing you anything. And a lot of the catalogs are general catalogs, like these are, where it has vegetables in one section, and then flowering types in the other section, and they're full, good-sized pictures and a detailed write-up about each of the plants.
Okay.
Another source, of course, is the retail store, where they got the different packets, but again, they're limited as to how much they could have on the shelves at any one time, the type of seeds. So they may have like 3 or 4 types of cucumbers. But in reality, there's probably 100, 150
or more
types of cucumbers. Another source is your feed and seed stores.
Yeah.
Okay, now they sell the seeds, common seeds, by a scoop. Now this is vegetables. They don't usually mess around with flower seeds. They do have the packets, just like the retail stores. But on their vegetable seeds, they usually have scoops, which makes it really, really cheap to buy the seeds. And I also encourage people that when you order seeds from the retail, get them from the retail, or you order them from the catalog, or you get them from the feed and seed store, write down the year that those seeds are, because if you don't use them all, you can put them in a refrigerator or freezer and they'll keep.
Okay. So how do you go about picking the seed that's best for you, though?
Well, again, excuse me. Again, cool season, warm season. On one of the previous episodes, we talked about planting cool weather crops.
I remember.
So if you're going to start your like beets, onions, lettuce, things of that nature, you want to start planting them just before the season starts cooling off. And as everybody knows, in the Mid-South, our springs are like that, and our falls are like that. It seems like we go from hot weather to cold weather. So we have a short growing season for the cool weather stuff. So the sooner you can start them, the better it is. And what you pick for growing is what do you like.
All right.
Okay, for example, I love beets. But
Really?
but how many people see beets in the produce section of a supermarket? And I was over at one of the places, and I look at their green onions. And there was like 12 green onions. The bundle was about this big. My green onions, one onion is that big. So, and I like onions.
Okay.
My wife doesn't like me to eat onions, but I like onions. But the main thing is growing what you like. There's no need to grow something that, number one, that the family doesn't like.
Sure.
Number two, if you got limited space, grow the things that you like that's expensive. Bell peppers are expensive, but individually, 50 cents a piece. Yellow squash, if you like yellow squash, if you grow them, they're easy to grow, then grow those. But don't waste your time on things you don't like, because, well, it's just the nature thing. You're supposed to grow these things. If you don't like tomatoes, don't bother with them.
Okay. All right. Well, we definitely appreciate that information, Mr. Tom.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thank you. This is mouse ear chickweed. It is a winter annual weed. It reproduces by seed, like soils that are high in nitrogen. And here's another valuable thing about chickweed to most. It is edible, so you can definitely eat mouse ear chickweed. If you want to get rid of it, if it's moist, you can easily just pull it up, or you can just use a broadleaf weed herbicide. Please read and follow the label. All right, Joellen, so you're going to tell us a little bit about planting bulbs, right?
Yes.
Tulips specifically.
Tulips.
So what do we need to know to get started?
Well, this is a typical area like you're going to see around anybody's house. It's got some shrubs next to it. It's next to the entrance of your door or the porch. And you say, oh, I'd like to put some flowers there. So we're going to start from scratch, just like the homeowners would start from scratch.
Okay.
First thing we're going to do is we're going to scrape off the mulch, because we don't, we want to save that because we don't incorporate that. So first we'll scrape off the mulch, and then we're going to dig down about 8 inches and turn the soil over and add some amendments.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get that started.
And you notice there are a few weeds in here, but
That's
we'll take those out.
I can pull those out while you're doing that.
And that looks good.
Okay, it does.
You want to dig down 8 inches. And you'll see there's not as good soil there, but look, we've
Look
got
at the worms. Right.
Yay, so that means we've got good soil here.
Good deal.
And you just simply turn that over. It's nice and moist. Because we want to add amendments, but we're going to incorporate those next.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Now we're ready for our amendment.
Okay. So what do
And
we have here that we're going to use?
This is some organic compost with cow manure in it, which has been decomposed, of course, but you can use your own compost, like, you know, if you've made your own compost, that would be something to add.
Okay.
And it will loosen the soil, break up these large clods, and it will make the bulbs much happier in the ground.
Yeah, we want the bulbs to be happy. We do. Do you want me to grab that and sit it up for you?
I always use my gloves.
And we're just spreading this, right?
Spreading this. We've got 3 bags to cover this area, so we'll kind of evenly just divide them.
Let's start on this end. All right, Joellen, so we have down our manure. What do we do next?
I would like to add a little bit of bone meal.
Okay.
It can be any type of bone meal. This happens to be an organic one.
Okay.
And we will sprinkle that down on, we'll sprinkle that down on the bed, because we want to incorporate it now, because we want to amend it inside, because we need to get it down deep in the ground, like about at least 6 inches, so that the bulbs will benefit from it.
Okay. Now, what does bone meal do? What's the purpose of it?
It's mostly phosphorus.
Okay.
And that will help the roots to establish and the stems and the shoots to grow for the bulbs.
All right.
And it doesn't take a whole lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much do you actually put down?
I kind of just sprinkle lightly because we don't want to overdo it. But we do want an even coat on the ground. And very good. That's all we will need.
How about that?
And now we will incorporate it with the compost in the ground.
Okay.
And can I have the, yeah, that one.
Okay.
This is too heavy to do that with.
All right.
And it will look like this is a little bit raised, but that's the whole point, to get good drainage.
Okay. Drainage is so important. We don't want those bulbs to rot, of course.
I would say we're ready to set our bulbs and plant.
All right. And what kind of bulbs do we have today?
We have 2 different types of bulbs. We have the yellow daffodils, and we've got red impression tulips.
Okay.
We're going to set the few daffodils at the back because they will stay in the bed and we won't want to disturb them.
Okay. Now this is going to be a real good lesson because most folks don't know which end to put in the ground. So we're going to find out for Joellen which one to do.
Yeah. Well, the pointy end goes up. If you can see this right here, those are actually roots that have dried up, and it'll form new roots at the base here.
Okay.
So this end goes down, and the pointy end goes up because that's where the stalk will come out with the daffodils. I like to set things out first and then plant.
Now, how far apart should they be? Now, does it matter?
I like to put daffodils about 12 inches apart because they multiply.
Okay.
And I'll put our tulips in front, and tulips are the same way. The fat part of the tulip is the bottom, the pointy end is the top. Roots will come out down at the bottom, stalk will come up at the top.
Okay. Good deal.
And depending on how thick you want these, I want these to be an accent, because we've also decided to put pansies on top of this for winter color. And these will come up in the spring through the pansies.
Through the pansies, okay.
So we don't want to plant them too close together. Now we're ready to plant, but if you'll notice, these are planted every other, kind of in a triangular pattern.
I noticed that.
If you put them that way, it'll look fuller and take up less plants. And they'll be evenly spaced.
Okay.
And you can plant with either a bulb digger or a trowel. And if you'll notice, both of these are marked at 4-inch intervals, so it tells you your depth of 4 inches.
Okay.
And most of these bulbs, 6 inches is all you really need. Our soils in this area are really heavy, and for drainage purposes, we would like to have them no more than 6 inches deep. Now that we've got the bulbs all planted, we have decided to put pansies on top of that for the winter color.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is put down a little bit of slow release fertilizer. And that's to feed the pansies all winter long.
Okay.
Then we're going to rake the mulch back over the dirt area.
All right.
And then we're going to set out our pansies and plant them. Now these, you want to make sure we don't get into the crown of the plant.
Okay.
Crown of the plant is at the soil surface. So we really don't want to plant these any deeper than the soil is here. So don't try to cover up the top of the plant, because you'll bury the crown.
Okay.
And yet you do want enough soil. What I usually do is I scrape the mulch away and just put a little bit of mulch near the plant, but not up against the stem.
How about that?
And that looks good.
Ta-da.
Now these will grow and fill in, and then the bulbs will come up in the spring and give us a completely different look.
That's gonna be nice. All right. But Joellen, we definitely appreciate this demonstration. And we
You're
can't wait
welcome.
to see the beautiful colors in the spring too for the bulbs.
I can't wait.
All right, thank you much.
You're welcome.
I have just moved up this plant. It's a digitalis, but I also have 3 or 4 different colors of digitalis. So in order to remember which color and cultivar this is, I use tags. You can use, this is a plastic tag that can be reused, or it can just move along with the plant. This is also an option, a popsicle stick. As long as you can write on it, this you might need to use a marker. With these, I use a pencil. And what I'll do is just write the scientific name on there. You don't have to do that, but I do. And then I'll put the common name. This is Camelot Peach. Most important to me, I like to keep information on my tag. I will put the date that it was seeded, and then the date that I uppotted, which on the back I will put a T for transplant, and then I will put today's date. I also keep this tag, it just kind of lives with the plant all the way through. I will, when I plant it in the ground, I will set it in the ground beside that plant, and then I will put a P on the tag, put the date it was planted, and I actually can keep these, and it gives me a record of how long it took from the plant to be seeded to when I actually planted it in the ground.
All right, Mr. D, what do we need to do to get prepared for the winter?
If you're putting your garden to bed and you're not going to do any gardening like you are, Mr. Tom, I would kind of break it down into taking care of my tools, you know, my hand tools, taking care of my gasoline-powered equipment, and my spray equipment. You kind of break it down into those three. Those are the 3 things that I try to take care of getting your equipment ready.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll mention briefly some of the sprays applications that you may want to put out on fruit trees if you have fruits over the winter. But on your hand tools, I would make sure they're clean. That's the number one thing. Your shovels and hoes and rakes and things like that, make sure they're clean. Coat the metal parts with a light coat of oil. You can use WD-40, or you can use your burnt cylinder oil that you have left over when you change the oil in your lawnmower or your tiller, and have an oily rag that's saturated with that, and make sure that all the metal parts are coated with a light coat of oils, one way or the other. If you have wooden handles, lightly sand those wooden handles. I know the shovel that you use, one of the shovels you used was really interesting. It's one that I'd love to get some boiled linseed oil on. But oil that shovel up, and then take again a shop cloth or a piece of a towel or an old T-shirt, and saturate it with boiled linseed oil, and just rub it all up and down that handle, and it'll be ready for another year of work. Sharpen, your shovels and your hose and all that. Go ahead and knock the burrs off of them if you hit rocks with them and things like that, and do that before you coat it with oil. And that should have your hand tools, ready to go. As far as your tiller and your lawnmower and your things like that, change the oil, put clean air filters in. Probably best to run the fuel out of them, let them run completely out. Okay. That's probably the best thing to do. If you're going to be using like I'm going to use my mower all winter, mulching leaves.
Yeah, I will too.
I make sure that I have stabilizer in the gasoline. Yeah. Make sure you do have stabilizer in your gasoline, and you'll be okay to leave that fuel in your machines if you're going to be using them over the winter. And I do that anyway. Yeah. Your sprayers, by all means wash them out. Take the tips out and put them in detergent. Your strainers and all of those, and rinse triple rinse your sprayers, and hang them upside down where they can completely dry out, and you'll be good to go there.
Okay.
And as far as fruit trees, look at the home orchard spray guides. There are some dormant sprays that you might want to put out, after all the leaves have come off. We're probably a little bit early on that right now, but as you get on over into the wintertime, you can spray with dormant oils, and on apples and pears, liquid lime sulfurs and things like that to take care of some of the insects that might overwinter in the bark crevices and things like that. But that'll kind of get you going in the right direction, getting ready for winter.
Okay. Now I know you did have some information about deer, because I know a lot of folks are having problems with deer this fall into the winter. So yeah, let's help them out with that.
Deer season will soon be open. It opens around Thanksgiving. Actually, muzzleloader season opens quicker than that. I think it's already open, and bow season is already open. And if you get a 12-year-old with a 243 or 223, take them out. They're a real problem, and I got hit by a deer last year. So fortunately, the score still, I've taken more deer than deer have taken me, but it did several $1,000s worth of damage to my pickup truck, and that's not an uncommon occurrence. Rut is about to start. And deer are even crazier during rut than they are any other time of the year. That means, the females come in heat, and so the bucks are chasing them, and they're more active right around dusk, early morning or late after, in the evening. They're kind of crepuscular. They like the low light times, and have your headlights on bright when you can. Don't blind the oncoming traffic, but get them on bright as soon as you can. And use your horn and slow down. If you see one that crosses the road, that definitely doesn't mean that's all of them. There may be another bigger one right behind it.
That's right.
As far as in your landscape, I know they're creating some damage, eating, there's not as much green foliage out there now, so they're coming into yards and fences, exclusions. You can tie a dog out in the yard, tether a dog. I mean, this is really, a tethered dog, barking dog would do a lot to keep deer out of your landscape. But if you go with a fence, you've got to have at least 8 feet tall, and that's not you're talking about 2 4-foot fences on top of each other.
My goodness.
If you're choosing landscape plants and you're in a deer in a highly populated deer area, go to the UT Extension or TSU Extension. They can give you a list of plants that deer don't like quite as much as others, and plant the ones that are least attractive to deer, and that will help you there. There are some repellents out there that might give you some temporary relief, but human hair and things like that might give you some temporary relief, but don't count on it to be permanent.
Wow.
And it's just a sign of the times. My young apple trees, I think I have half a dozen apple trees, and 2 of them the deer are using to sharpen their antlers on.
Wow.
And they're deer rubs. And I will take care of that. I do not live in the city limits, but I will take care
You
of
will
it.
take care of it. Okay, I'm sure you will. Okay then, Mr. Tom, Joellen, Mr. D, we're out of time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. If you want to get more information about butterfly gardens, Japanese maples, or hundreds of other gardening topics, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. While you're there, you can ask us your gardening question. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.